What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens theory video. Today is going to be a different type of video, as today we are going to be paying honor to one of the most memorable, or at least one of the most well-known villains in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, and that is the Supreme Kings returning to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens anime. More so than just a one Supreme King, I should just say. This I'm going to say it right off the bat, is probably the most likely theory to happen out of all of the theories I have made so far. I made a theory for Yugimoto being Mr. Gohan and the Seven Barian Emperors returning to Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, or at least their descendants. But this one I feel like is going to be the closest that we get to one of these theories being right. And this is what this video is going to be explaining. I will be giving some points that I think could work, and I'm going to give some points that won't work. This is the second to last theory video that I will be making for this series. I have one more after this, which isn't going to be this weird, I guess, because it's still weird talking about the Supreme Kings and bringing back stuff. The next one I have, which is the last one I have planned, is going to be more related to only Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. No tropes to the old shows or anything. It's just going to be new. I will mention the old shows, but it will only be more focused on Sevens. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into this theory of the Supreme King returning to Yu-Gi-Oh! 7. So let's start off with some pretty positive things. Like I mentioned before, I think this is probably the most likely thing to happen out of all the theories that I've have so far, as because not only has this concept been brought up before, like the one I did with the Seven Barian Emperors, the Barian Emperors, the Barians were a thing in the show. This would be the third time that the Supreme King has been a thing in a Yu-Gi-Oh anime. The first one being Supreme King Hao, the dark version of Jaden. After he had to watch all of his friends get killed in season 3, he basically turns into he lets his anger take over, and he turns into the Supreme King known as Hao. And then you also had Yuya Sakaki, which was one of the 4 reincarnates of Zark, which Zark was his own Supreme King after he went crazy with his entertainment dueling, because he started to go more into violence when he went into dueling, to the point where he would actually make people cough out blood, which is really weird when you think about that in a Yu-Gi-Oh show. So we've been introduced to this concept twice, which I think with this series, and I always bring these up in these 20th anniversary thing when it comes to these 3 theories, is because to be honest, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 so far, from the 9 episodes that we have, they have not shown any resemblance to the 20th anniversary. Sure, there's been references with the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but you had the same thing with Zexal when you had those statues, or you had GX with Kaiba Man summoning Blue Eyes, so it hasn't really felt like it. Doing this would definitely pay some more oath to the original series. Now, I'm going to say this real quick before we continue further talking about this. I will say, though, I do not think it's Jaden or Zark. I do not think that those are going to be the Supreme Kings of this series. I think it's going to be a brand new Supreme King, and obviously this is more towards Mr. Gohan. We have been literally talking about this dude for the last 3 videos that actually every theory video I've made so far is talking about Mr. Gohan, because with him being the main antagonist and we don't know his identity, there's so much that we can do with this character, whether that be making him Yugimoto or making him a Supreme King, which he kind of already is that in his own way, as he's the leader of Gohan Corps, but you know what I mean, the more like darker side to things, where he basically destroys the world, I guess. Now, as cool as this, and I can see a really good story with this, maybe like something bad in his past happened, and the reason why he hides his face. It kind of reminds me of a case of like what Zone kind of was, because with Zone's case, he kind of like he became Yusei to then, after what happened with his world with the second Zero reverse, he basically lost everything, in which made him to the point of where he got anger filled and went back in time to try to stop Yusei, to try to kill Yusei, so that this Zero Reverse would not happen again. That he could save the world by doing this. I feel like that can be in a case with this, to where something happened to Mr. Gohan. Like, I don't think he was like a body fusion, like making himself like a new character, unless like we find out he is Yugimoto. But in the terms of like it was him kind of doing the same thing that Zone does, and then that's where he is. Or if you want to say the Jaden thing, or like say it's Jaden or Yuya, you can do the same thing, but because he also took his appearance, he also took in the darkness that came with it. So in this case, it would be Zark would be the Yuya version of this, or it might be the full-on Zark, like reincarnation or something like that. I guess you can say that. But obviously, I'm talking total nonsense with this, but I was trying to give a idea with that. Honestly, the story. I will say though, the one thing that I've had a problem with this is that this would probably be one of the weirdest ways they do this, because I don't really see, because the Supreme King was created from the darkness of a person. Now maybe the Supreme King still shows up, but after say we could say this too. Say like it gets closer to the end of the series and Yuga defeats Mr. Gohan, but Mr. Gohan thought he wasn't doing anything wrong, and then the darkness inside of him, or some type of darkness, takes over him, and he becomes the Supreme King, and basically destroys everything. I can see that happening in a certain case, so maybe they can do something with that. I I will say this theory is definitely a lot harder to explain than the previous two, but this one, I think it still is the most viable, and I think it's really cool that you can make so many storylines with it. Obviously, it has to be a character that fell into darkness. For example, the other ones, when Jaden got angry, that basically was the case to where the Supreme King was taking over him. His anger was getting the best of him, and it made him become Supreme King Hao. Or you had the whole thing with Yuya going berserk because Zark kept trying to take over him. You can have that kind of concept with Mr. Gohan, and I think that would still work, but I'm gonna take this right now. I'm going to say this, and this is the one thing that hinders this theory so much, which I hope this doesn't become the trend of the Supreme King, but I think this is the routes that they were originally going when they were making it for GX and Arc 5. My biggest thing about the theory that makes it to where it probably won't work is because the last two Supreme Kings that we got were the main protagonists. And that really hurts this theory a lot, because these Supreme Kings were beings that came from these protagonists. Basically, their anger and their rage, their darkness inside of them, basically taking control as the Supreme King. Gohan is basically the main antagonist of this series, and it just would be a whole new change to it. And I think this was the route they were going when they created the first two Supreme Kings, that it was going to be the darkness of the main protagonist, not the antagonist, which really does hurt this theory a lot. I think this is the big thing to where this makes it not going to work. But I can also see it in the point where maybe the studio doesn't care that that was the route they went with. Maybe they think like, maybe it doesn't need to be a protagonist. Maybe it's just someone that falls into a deeper darkness inside of themselves. Like maybe Mr. Gohan didn't want to be like this dictator type of character, but the darkness kind of took over him. Like, let's give an example of Dr. Faker from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. He was kind of taking control of by the Baryon Vector, and what kind of was his situation is that he wanted to save his brother Heart, so he went into this dark side to basically try to save his son. I could see it in a way like that. Maybe Mr. Gohan was doing this and taking over this corporation and having him dictate the was the best way. Maybe like make his son live in a better world or something like that. Maybe there's a case of that. And that's not, and he didn't want it to be like this. And maybe it's like the contract that he made, like maybe it was like a contract that he made with something, maybe like a darkness type of character or something like that. He made this contract with them to kind of protect Duel Monsters, so that one day that the card game can involve the world into darkness or something like that. And now that Yuga changed it to Rush Duels, that completely change it because it makes the game different, and maybe like the dark gods or something like that don't want that to happen. So Mr. Goa has to try to get rid of that in a sense. And then when Yuga goes to duel him in the final like couple of episodes, you realize that Mr. Goa didn't want to do this. Like he actually thought Rush Duels was a cool idea, especially for a kid. But this darkness didn't want that and basically takes over him. And you can say it wasn't the people taking over him. Maybe they implanted the true darkness inside of him to make him become this way. I think that would be a really interesting story. And maybe if you don't want to call it like a Supreme King figure, I think that would just be a cool way to make him more, I guess, more intense, I guess, as a villain. Because all we've gotten him from his laughs, like, is ha, ha, ha. Like, we haven't really gotten anything else from this character. And I feel like that would be a really cool way of how they make him a more intimidating antagonist for the series, and I would really enjoy that. I think that would be a really cool concept and kind of give him some depth to his character a little bit more than just the laughs that we got. So I think that would be really cool. But I guess saying the Supreme King name with that makes it a little bit harder, but I think it would still be a cool way to do it. But that goes back to the point where how can you really make it a Supreme King character if it's not the main protagonist? I feel like that was the route they went, but hopefully I'm wrong about that. I mean, that would be a cool way to do it. But I guess the other, if you want to still implement the Supreme King, I guess you can say like maybe Yuga turns into the Supreme King. I mean, that would fit with the whole trope of the main protagonist. I don't, maybe, and it went to the sense like Yuga like thinks like he's this high and mighty person because he created Rush Duels and that became the new style, and maybe he let the glory and fame take over and then he becomes the king or something like that. I don't know. I don't see it in Yuga's character, but if you want to keep this, if you want the Supreme King in there, maybe you can do that with Yuga because that can fit the main protagonist trope. But I guess that's more of what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think of that. Now, I decided to add in this theory video. I was thinking about doing the other one, but because that one's more different than this one, I think I'm gonna leave that out. But I'm gonna quickly mention like from the highest chance to the lowest chance from the last three theories. I'm gonna give what my highest chances are and what my lowest chance is gonna be. So let's get into this little segment real quick. So, if we gather all three of the theory videos that I've made, the least common one, the least likely one to happen is definitely the Yugi one. I feel like that story that I made of with him being possessed by the Millennium Ring, I think would just be... I don't see the studio doing that because I think that would be taking a really big risk. As really cool as that be, I don't think they would do something like that because I don't think they would think about something like that. I'm not trying to be mean when I say that, but I just don't see them doing that type of concept because I think that would really hurt Yugi's character, like thinking like, oh, he doesn't need it, like he needs a 10 because now he's getting taken over by darkness at this point. He's been taken over by the ring. That didn't happen when a 10 was around, so I guess that would be hurting Yugi's character. But I don't know. As much as that is probably the biggest one that I want personally, I don't see them doing that. I don't think that would ever be a concept, but that would be really cool. The second to least one would probably be the 7 Baryon Emperors. My biggest problem with that is that I think they were done with the Baryons. I think Baryon World basically doesn't exist anymore after the 7 Baryon Emperors left, so I don't think that would happen anymore. But you never know. I think that you can do a cool concept with Don Dowsing returning and kind of doing something like that. But it's highly unlikely. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I think this one is probably the most likely, with the Supreme King already being a concept. And even if you want to bring back the originals, I didn't really talk about it because I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. But if you want to, you can bring these original versions back. I think the one that would hurt the most is Zark, because I feel like there would be no points to ending R5. I feel like Zark was fully defeated after the second time, because now like Yugioh is still Zark at this point now, because now he has all the 4 or the other 3 U counterparts of himself fused with him. So I guess you can say he's now Zark. Like, he's fully Zark now, even though he's now known as Yuya. I think the whole Zark aspect from him is now completely gone, so I don't see that. But with Jaden, I think you can still go with Hal, because I think the Supreme King is still inside of him. It's always been a concept with him now, and I think he kind of mentioned that in like in the final episode of season 3, where like the Supreme King is still a part of him. He still is the Supreme King, but now he can control it. Maybe it goes in the case to where he can't. Maybe if you want to say that Jaden is or that Jaden is Gohan, excuse me, you can say like maybe the darkness took over because of something happened. Maybe he went and got, I don't know, brainwashed or something like that. I doubt that would happen. We all know what brainwashing has done in Yu-Gi-Oh series. Just watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 Season 3 and you'll know what I'm talking about. But like maybe something like that happens, or like maybe something happens and then the darkness retakes over and he can't control it anymore. Like Yubel can't help him control it anymore, or something like that. Maybe they both get angry at something, and that just causes them to be taking control of the darkness again. I don't know. I get definitely that one was the hardest to explain, but I think it's the most likely. And I'm not a writer. I should not be anywhere close to writing a story for the Yu-Gi-Oh community, because I honestly have no idea on what they can do with that. The only one I thought was the Yugi one. That was the only one that I can think of, and that was just because something just sparked in my head and I think that could work. But let me know you guys' thoughts down below. If you guys actually, you know what? This is what I want you guys to do. Let me know in the comment section below your guys' storyline when it comes to the Supreme King being able to fit in this. Whether you think it should be Mr. Gohan, that should be the Supreme King, you give a story to that. Or if you think that Yuga and keep with the main protagonist trope, and that he should become the Supreme King and give a story based on that. And I guess you can do it for Rook, Roman, and Gakuto if you want to. I guess the other one is Rook because you kind of sense that darkness into him as well. I feel like if he's anyone out of the four to turn, it's definitely him. But I guess that depends on how you look at it. I just say Mr. Goha or Yuga just because of the fact that Mr. Goha we know nothing about, so I think he has so much potential that you can do with this character. And then you have Yuga, which again was the main protagonist, and we know the trope with the Supreme King and the protagonist. So yeah, I would love to know your guys' storyline when it comes to that. Like, if you were to create your own story with the Supreme King, let me know what that would be. Type it in a full paragraph. I don't care how long you type it in. I want to see a full in-depth conversation about this, because I think you guys are way better at doing that, and I think it would be so cool to think what the community thinks of this idea. Or if you have a storyline for the other two theories that I made, or the next theory that I have coming out hopefully soon. I don't know when I will be able to get the chance to do it, but I will try to get it out as soon as possible. When that video comes out, leave in the description of those videos your guys' theories of what storyline you think would be the best if they went down that route. I would love to know. But guys, I think that is going to be it for this theory video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This one was definitely the hardest one to make just because of the fact of what we've known of the Supreme Kings, of how they've really worked. I think this was the hardest way to implement a story because you don't have any other backlashes other than adding like the additional characters, like having Jaden being a part of that, because again, like how you don't have Supreme King Hal without Jaden or something like that. But yeah, this one was definitely the hardest one to make, and definitely let me know you guys' storylines down below. I would love to hear them. But I think that's all I got for this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. And until next time, guys, take care.